LSU Odyssey is live in the building, in the house. How's it going, everybody? How's it going? LSU, as we wrote in our article last night, hopefully you read it as you got up this morning with your morning coffee or your morning dump, or you ignored it but still saw its existence. But we wrote an article, kind of an instant reaction to the game last night, where LSU lost 38-35 to Houston. And it wasn't so much the listless performance that bothered me as much as it was really the fact that where we are in college football, it leaves us with these really empty, almost pointless games. I mean, it wasn't a pointless game, wasn't completely pointless. Like, some guys probably got a big ton of value out of it, a few people maybe, but not many. And it just really hard watch. I mean, I'm as obsessive with LSU as anybody, and for me, that was a very tough watch. And I'm like, I'll watch anything LSU. You give it to me, I'm all in. Any era, whatever. And guys, it was a tough watch. It was a tough watch. Hate to say that, but that's where LSU is right now. They're at this place where, it's not. Everything is in flux. Everything is in wild transition right now for LSU. Wild transition. You watched a game last night where half of that team, maybe more than half of that team, aren't going to be there next year. Not going to be there next year at all. Where the entire starting offensive line, or almost the entire offensive line room, is going to be gone. This is a team where it was an interim head coach after Brian Kelly fired mid-season, as we all know. You had your future head coach on the sidelines hanging out with athletic director Verge Osbury and a few other really high-level folks, including one of my favorite people in the business, Michael Bonnet, LSU sporting director, LSU sports info information director, works with the media. I've driven him nuts many times, but he's always been so good to us and so cool to us, and absolutely love Michael. And it was really cool to see this shot where this is where Kiffin is having an exchange with Jacob Hester, LSU legend, as you know, Jacob Hester. And it's right after his LSU radio interview, and Bonnet is looking in on it, just like, there's a good vibe here. There's a start of something tangible here at LSU that, Michael Bonnet's seen it all. And he's seen people who were here for the contract. He's seen people here who were here for destiny. He saw people who were glory hunters, who were in and out. He's seen it all. And the look he's giving Kiffin and Hester in that moment is just one of, like, for me, it felt like buckle up for another one. Like, buckle up for a ride here. Just some vibes there. Just some vibes. But as for the LSU Houston game itself, LSU were really poor. Offensively, you start the game in the best way possible. You're getting big chunk plays. You're going up and down the field, and then you finish it off with a brilliant Trades Green touchdown. He had 2 on the day, 80 yards, 4 catches, 2 touchdowns. Definitely your player of the game. Probably all around, at least offensively. But I think probably all around, Trades Green was your player of the game. That gives him 7 touchdowns this season in 2025, but also 11 in 2 seasons as a Tiger. And remember, his freshman year, he was barely even used until the last like 2 or 3 games, and racked up 4 touchdowns out of nowhere. But he also give him an assist for throwing Xavier Thomas into the end zone. Basically just throws his teammate Xavier into the end zone for the touchdown. Brilliant play by him. Heads up play. And supposedly, I haven't seen footage of this, but you could see Trades Green going up and down the sidelines and demanding more from his teammates. Kind of being like disgusted at what he was seeing. Kind of like, come on. Like, because we're going to get into it, but this was a game where LSU really screwed themselves. LSU gave up 21 unanswered points after a 14-0 start. You open the game with a 99-yard kickoff return touchdown from Berrien Brown. Dude goes 99 freaking yards. 99 yards. And then you proceed to allow, I think it was like 27 something unanswered points. Like, I mean, and it was 21 unanswered points just before half. The second half became kind of more of a slugfest, a back and forth. They would punch, we would punch back, and it was kind of more back and forth. But LSU, despite finally scoring over 24 points against a power 4 opponent, against an FBS opponent. We've only scored above 25 points against Southeastern before this game. Finally, against Houston, we score 35 points. We get there. Avoid that utter disgustitude and infamy, but at the same time, doesn't look pretty at all doing this in this game last night. It was hard viewing, guys. It was hard viewing. I know you watched it like right along with me. Hard viewing. And it wasn't just that LSU let Connor Wegman dictate to us. It wasn't just that LSU's defense really got run over in this game for a large part. Allowed 201 rushing yards, let him throw 4 touchdown passes on us. I mean, who is that big name, 6'7" tight end? He caught a touchdown for Houston on DJ Pickett. That's the first touchdown DJ Pickett allowed all season. You were seeing LSU's best available players getting cooked. 4.4 yards per rush from Houston. Okay. And they had 220 overall rushing yards, really, but 19 yards lost from the few TFLs LSU had. Of course, LSU could not get a sack. Finished the season with 27 sacks, so fewer than the 2023 Matt House defense. You gave them 32 first downs. They're controlling a lot of clock. 82 total plays. 82 total plays. Another 80-play festival. And this is Connor Wegman, guys. This is Connor Wegman. And then your offense let Michael Van Buren get abused for 4 sacks. Michael Van Buren did okay. 3 touchdown passes, 246 passing yards, 16 to 27, but he wasn't anything to really like write home about. He didn't take the game over like he could have. He had 27 rushing yards at one point, and he had a few really key scrambles, but the sacks killed us. 4 sacks, you look at it, okay, maybe just 4, but it's when that happened. All 4 of them were so freaking just disastrous for us. So disastrous. And LSU could not recover because we didn't have the leadership on this roster to recover from what was happening to us. Let's see, what was the name of that? Tanner Koziel, yeah, the tight end. He was quiet, and then suddenly he ends the game with 9 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. He was quiet to start the game, and then he just erupts. 11 targets, 9 catches, 76 yards, and the touchdown caught on DJ Pickett, which was shocking. And then Amari Thomas went off for 7 for 66 and 2 touchdowns against us. So without Whit Weeks, without Harold Perkins, without Mansour Delane, without, most importantly, in my opinion, AJ freaking Halsey, probably the best player on the defense this season outside of Delane, LSU. I mean, you're without Pyburn too. I mean, Toby, you were missing so much depth as well, and then you had guys on top of that who had left the program. Stuff like you had so little depth to speak of. You had no pass rush whatsoever against Houston. Connor Wegman could go back and do what he wanted. 4 touchdown passes. I'm surprised it took him so long in the game to really get going. LSU started off the game really well, and then give up 21 in the first half, give up 17 in the second. Well, I shouldn't say gave up 20 because special teams gave up a touchdown. Oh yeah, we also gave up 126 rushing yards to Dean Connors. That's Houston's like great white hope. The guy has like a number in the 40s, and we let him like Mike Allstott our asses. What is going on here? And it just speaks to Connor Wegman had 56 rushing yards against us. That is inexcusable. And that is why there's some of these coaches who many thought of as top tier who will not be returning next season. And it's kind of stunning to us, like how some of these guys didn't quite work out at LSU. Like, how did this guy not fit? How did this guy not pull it off? But you have no pass rush. You have no defensive line impact. A ton of pressures, ton of chaos, but you don't finish these plays off in the backfield, so it does not matter in the end. What's up, Paul? Paul Tarver says first and goal at the 6-inch line and could not go under center and execute a quarterback sneak. Yep. Man, that play was so horrendous. Michael Van Buren literally trips over himself, misses the whole read completely. Like you're probably better giving that ball to Caden Durham considering he walks into the end zone. He keeps it, trips over himself. It was like watching a Three Stooges episode. Horrible. And it has to feel like you're part of the D-Day invasion, being on this offense, being a part of this offense. Like, holy shit, guys. Like, nothing works. Nothing. except for Trey'Dez Green. And the fact that we didn't understand, just throw the guy the football and you'll actually have some success. The fact that we couldn't understand that. The fact that there were times Nussmeier, Michael Van Buren could not deliver Trey'Dez Green the football accurately over coverage is insane. But that happened multiple times. And now you see what Trey'Dez Green can do when you actually find the right matchups, find the right places for him on the football field to exploit, the right players to exploit. It's all about figuring out ways to get him matchups. And, he's not a prototypical Lane Kiffin tight end. But I hope that Lane Kiffin will just view him as a receiver and do whatever it takes to keep Trey'Dez Green. Obviously, this should be a no-brainer, but teams are going to go after this kid, and you need to be prepared for that. I'm telling you guys right now, they're coming for Trey'Dez Green. But LSU can hold on to him easily if they make the right moves. You're going to probably have to up his NIL to around $2 million for next season. Because the number I've heard was 1.7 was kind of the offer being levied towards Trey'Dez Green by an unnamed school, a school I'm going to name in the next 24 hours, but I need to get clearance before I can just do that. But Trey'Dez Green has already received some feelers, some invitations. You got to keep Trey'Dez, man. He was dominant. He is hard to stop, almost impossible to stop, especially if you see him working with a great quarterback. I mean, the times that like Nuss was flying high at the end of 2024, and he was throwing the ball to Trey'Dez Green, and it was like, damn, those two are going to put up some big time numbers. I don't know how that didn't happen. It felt like it still could this season. Like you had so much potential to really rack up those numbers with, Nussmeier and Trey'Dez Green alongside each other. It just never happened. Just never quite was a partnership that took off. I wonder why. Maybe it was because our quarterback had 2 different injuries, could barely throw the football more than 10 yards, and our play caller was almost like mired in self-sabotage. Because it was like, Joe, this is crazy. Why are we even, there's no way this can be this bad. LSU, in this Texas Bowl for the 3rd time in 4 years. A shitty bowl game. It is Houston, which is awesome. Love Houston. In NRG Stadium, it seems to always draw some type of celebrity power, no matter how small the bowl game is. Like, Malik Neighbors. My man Malik, friend of the program, Malik Neighbors, showed up and was hanging out with Lane Kiffin, taking photos with Kiffin. Why the hell's my water? There it is. You had Malik Neighbors on the sidelines, and I mean, you love seeing that. Damone Clark, Daniil Hunter were both hanging out with the team during the week. Damone Clark hanging out with his man, Blake Baker. And, I want to make a point. I made a post today about some fans, showing some fans just disgusted with Blake Baker. Going at Blake Baker saying he's a problem. We paid him too much. What are we doing with Blake Baker? Why do we have Blake Baker? Why do we have this guy? Why are we paying him? Why we're paying him this much money? He can't even stop a running quarterback. And it's like there's some valid concerns there. Some valid concerns. The running quarterback thing is legitimate. Here's what I will say. I mean, every defense has a problem against running quarterbacks. Even Nick Saban's defenses did. You're not always going to get it right against guys like that. No excuse. It was bad. You didn't even prepare for Marcel Reed. I understand those type of things. But this is a defense that was 26th in scoring defense held teams to 19.8 points per game, and that was at their worst. Most of the season, they were allowing 9 to like 11.8 points per game. If LSU's fucking offense could score more than 25 points a game, LSU probably has only 2 or 3 losses at the most. That's how good that defense is. And I understand there's some big problems with that defense. And most of I'll give you the number one problem: health. When you don't have your best players, you're going to play your worst. You're going to look bad, obviously. That defense seemed to figure out running quarterbacks after getting embarrassed by Trinidad Chambliss. They come back and clamp down Lenora Sellers. Absolutely abused Lenora Sellers. 44 quarterback pressures, 5 sacks. I mean, Whit Weeks, Harold Perkins were pressuring him ad nauseum. There should have been way more sacks too. But then after that, Whit Weeks gets injured before he has a chance to be a part of the defense that plays against Vanderbilt. And that's the game where LSU's season goes right down the drain. You can point to the Texas A&M game all you want, but like the Vanderbilt game is where everything truly was exposed. Everything truly went down the drain. That's when the catastrophe began. I mean, not began, but that's when the catastrophe was at its. Like no one could deny the ugly face of that 2025 team anymore. People were still trying to defend Brian Kelly. People were still trying to grasp for straws. People were still trying to, make up excuses or say, oh, it's on this person, it's on that guy, it's on this. At the end of the day, you lose like that to Vanderbilt. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have to answer for it. And it doesn't matter how good Vanderbilt is, too, But Diego Pavia did that to a Blake Baker defense. And that is something that, that's a reality that we have to acknowledge and understand as highly lauded as Blake Baker's defensive efforts have been and his defenses have been. And I'm not expecting the 85 Bears, and I think the fans who expect a defense to hold every team under 20 points don't even understand like how it just doesn't even happen in football anymore. So like what this defense did this season is actually pretty rare. Like put it in actual context, but they did collapse for 2 straight seasons in the biggest games against the toughest opponents in the biggest moments on the biggest of stages. Completely collapsed. Sure, you could point to like, well, this team in this year had this guy injured, and that Whit Weeks was injured, and Harold Perkins was out in 2024, and this guy was hurt, and then this guy, this blah blah blah. I'm intrigued by the argument there, but at the same time, I'm just sick of the excuses. And when you let a guy like some of the quarterbacks that LSU, like Jalen Milroe, when you let a guy like Jalen Milroe absolutely shit all over you, when you let Diego Pavia, who's Heisman runner-up, Diego Pavia, incredible player, incredible season that he had this year, but when you let him do that to you, when you let Trinidad Chambliss do that to you, when you let some of these quarterbacks that you let absolutely dominate your defenses, it does make you say, you've got to get the right guys and you got to load up this defense. But most of the money went to the defense this last portal. And Blake Baker had a ton of money to throw down there. And I think we need to talk about who was amiss, because you're not going to hit on everybody at each portal window. Even for the fans who want everything to be perfect and change the narrative. They never wanted Brennan to start over Burrow. They never wanted Brennan to start over Jaden Daniels. They never, they changed the narrative for every single thing. They never they never said they loved Brian Kelly, never once. Like, they never blocked people who criticized or questioned Brian Kelly. They never did anything like that. Like, these are the type of revisionist, delusional, fictional type of folks who will say, yeah, 11.8 points per game, fire that guy. Blake Baker sucks. And, like, it's annoying. But I at the same time, I understand their concerns because you did it back-to-back seasons, and maybe he, didn't have the best personnel, etc., but you gave him a ton of money in 2025 to remedy what happened in 2024, and he didn't evaluate the right guys. So you're talking about Jack Pyburn, Jamari Butler. Just right there. Those are two that you missed on big time. Jamari Butler never quite gave you much of anything. He had great length. He would get in there for a pressure or two. He would make a play kind of where he'd get in the backfield, get like a piece of a sack, not really like go in there and smash a quarterback, And that's what kind of annoys me is it's like every one of those guys probably listens to NBA Youngboy too much or listens to AFI too much instead of like voting Republican and listening to Ted Nugent or like, Boosie Badass and like absolutely raising some hell. And you had some soft ass finesse guys on that defensive line, on that defensive front, as well as the offensive front for the last few seasons. Too much finesse. Too much finesse. Jamari Butler, Jack Pyburn are two guys that I say that maybe you missed on because Pyburn, I take that back. Pyburn, I don't think you missed on. I think Pyburn just didn't deliver this season because Pyburn had so many chances to make sacks in the backfield and could not finish plays. 5.5 TFLs, which is lower than I expected from him, but just 2 sacks. And I think 3 of those, or at least 2 of those were just a half of a sack. Maybe all of them were half sacks, but 1 pass deflection, 1 fumble recovery. Pyburn really could have been a lot better of a player this season. And we were expecting him to be a lot better of a player this season. The reason this did not work out is simply you overrun things against top quarterbacks and you're going to miss dearly. You're going to pay dearly. And that's what happened with Jack Pyburn. He missed quarterbacks in the backfield way too much. Could not finish off these plays. Racked up the pressures. Could not finish off the plays. Neither could Pat Payton. I mean, just 1 sack. 1 sack this season. 5 TFLs. He did have 6 pass breakups, and a few of those actually, when he batted the pass, they were intercepted. So he had some impact here and there that goes beyond the stats. But Payton, once again, another defensive end who just didn't deliver anything in the backfield really for you. Like kind of here and there, but nothing as far as like going after and abusing the quarterback. There are times that the stats will not show times that Patrick Payton like obliterated the quarterback and like forced the quarterback to throw it out of bounds quickly, just bullet it out of bounds. It's going to get smashed into the ground. It doesn't credit that, a pressure or something does, but like someone can just point at like he only had 1 sack and kind of dog him. At the same time, 1 sack, come on. If he had 4 or 5, I would have thought that was kind of on the lower side. But like, hey, he was still good this season, Pat Payton. But Pyburn, Pat Payton, Jamari Butler, all 3 of them didn't pop for you. And I don't think it's all on those guys not being good enough players. Because everyone was after those guys. Everyone was in pursuit of those guys. I think it's that the edge rushing scheme, the way that we pass rushed, there's something that was just wrong there. There's something that was just, it felt always wrong there with it, which is far too much aggression, stuff like that. Bernard Gooden, I think you hit on. I think he was a great locker room player. I think he had like great vibe about him. He just did not produce enough. Only 4 TFLs and 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He just didn't produce enough. And then he had a couple little injuries here and there that took him out of some big games. Um, Bauer Sharp, offensively, that's a guy you absolutely missed on big time. But yeah, defensively, there were some guys that you missed on defensively, the evaluation there. So Baker has to clean that up this next season. And how do you do that? How are you going to figure that out? And, guys like Collage Cobbins, CJ Jim Coyley, where do they fit in this team going forward? Guys like that, guys like PJ Woodland, guys like Tylen Singleton, guys like Dominic McKinley. Guys like Gabe Relaford coming back from a broken arm. Where do they fit? Damian Shanklin. He had 2 sacks in one game, and then you never saw him really play again. So I want to know where those guys fit in this season and is coming forward, where they fit in. CJ Ross on at linebacker as well. I want to know where these guys fit in on this roster, in this program coming forward. I think that'll say a lot about the kind of the makeup of this team. If you retain a lot of these guys, some will be disappointed. I will think that it actually might be a more astute decision, because then you can spend that money elsewhere, like offensive line, and bank on the idea that Blake Baker and these defensive coaches can bring some of these guys along, and you don't have to go out and go get a top 5, top 2, top 3 transfer in the portal at every position. I mean, if you have the money to do it, do it. And I think LSU does. We have reported that LSU has $38.9 million to spend this transfer portal window that opens on January 2nd. Almost $40 million to spend on transfer portal targets. It should be 19 for the defense, and then just over 19 for the offense, because they're going to need it, the offensive line. No, actually, maybe 15, maybe actually 12 for the defense, and then far more kind of slant that more or offensively, because you're going to have to get that whole new offensive line. You're going to have to figure out the whole thing straight away again. You're going to have to start from scratch, almost all these guys. New quarterbacks, almost new running back room. There was something that happened in the game yesterday that really pissed me off. Harlem Berry had a 36-yard run on his first carry, and then he has 2 other carries. One of the carries goes for, I think, like 11 yards or something like that. The next carry goes for a couple, and then he fumbles it. Like a terrible fumble at the worst time in the game. Houston seizes control from that fumble. But what really bothers me is that Frank Wilson did not give Harlem Berry another carry the rest of the game. And after the game, Frank Wilson's response to that question, I think that was Glenn West who asked the question. I'm not sure who asked the question, but whoever did, I will credit you. You did a fantastic job on asking that question. But they said, why didn't he, get another carry after the fumble? And Frank Wilson says, pauses and just kind of stares and says, he's going to have a bright future at this program. And it's like so cryptic, so weird. And Frank's leaving. And so it's bizarre with Harlem Berry. It's very bizarre. You think of that, wouldn't it maybe endear himself to, him to Frank more, because his family are tight with Frank. He's tight with Frank. But this is a move that, just shows a complete lack of trust. Like, I don't buy into you, man. Like, I'm not going to give you the football again after that. You're out of this game. That's kind of damning from a running back's perspective. and Frank Wilson's the head coach. He's your running backs coach. Like, that's your guy. And he's basically saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes to not give you the football after you cough it up. I'm not going to give you a chance to atone. That to me is bullshit, especially if you want to hang on to Harlem Berry, especially if you think that he's going to be a great piece to the puzzle for the future, especially when all indications are, unless he has a big 180 change of heart, that Caden Durham is also going to be entering the portal. You really need Harlem Berry. You need him. Even though you're going to be most likely, I would say it's a 98% chance right now that LSU will bring in Ole Miss's 21 touchdown superstar running back, Kawan Lacey, in this portal. Him and Kevin Smith, almost a package deal. No brainer. Absolutely for sure that Kawan Lacey will be an LSU Tiger, unless something really goes crazily wrong for them in that situation. Unless things crazily change, or like relationships change. But you've also got to have depth there. You've got to have a strong guy in the number 2 position. And Harlem Berry, I don't think you can get better than that. But it was very shameful to not see him get another carry. The game, it was a rough game. There's Tylen Singleton. A good shot there of Tylen Singleton in action. There's Pat Payton. There's Dominic McKinley. Will you see Dominic McKinley in an LSU Tiger uniform again? He made a really bad play where he almost took off Connor Wegman's skull and got a huge flag for it on what could have been a really fantastic and instead it turned out to be a big penalty that gave them a touchdown. Yeah, there's D-Mac right there. And I think Dominic McKinley's another guy you have to keep. You've lost so much depth there. You can't just retool it from the defensive line consistently with all these guys who are actually going to care and give a shit. Dominic McKinley's got 2 years of experience. He's coming into his own, former 5-star. You'd be stupid and a fool to not try and get him to come back next season. Honestly. If he doesn't, okay, he doesn't. But to not even make an attempt would be stunning stuff. This play has to be shown, I think, because, this was just, wow. Barry on Brown. What a play. This dude is just an absolute freak. He just, 6 SEC leading 6 kick return touchdowns. That is now the SEC all-time record. 6 kickoff return touchdowns for Barryon Brown from his time at Kentucky and at LSU. Incredible stuff from Barryon Brown. Had 1 catch for 36 yards as well, but not really used too much. You wonder how he's out of eligibility, sadly, but you'd wonder how much Barryon Brown, what kind of player he could have been, what type of player Aaron Anderson could have been in a Lane Kiffin offense. A lot of people are going to laugh at that. Barryon Brown was terrible. He was awful. And it's like, yeah, he had some bad moments this season. And he does seem like just a returner, right? But I don't know about that. I think you put him in a Lane Kiffin offense, him and Aaron Anderson, you put them in the slot, they could absolutely torch guys for a few thousand yards, man. Paul Tarver says Harlem Berry had 0 carries after his fumble. Frank iced him in the doghouse. Shameful. If that's Frank's choice, okay. I just think that's not the way to leave things here. It's just not. Paul Tarver says, good call on. Too much finesse and not enough mean, nasty, mauling Tigers with attitude. When you're talking about the defensive line at LSU, you have to have it, man. You have to have it. And there's too much finesse on either the defensive line or the offensive line at LSU. It's just not enough. It's just too. They are. I hate to just throw around. You're soft. You're soft. You're soft. You're soft. I hate throwing that around as someone who isn't actively playing the game while watching guys who are. But our offensive lines, our defensive lines over the last few years, I'm not calling out like any single guy. I'm just saying they've been soft. They haven't produced like they should. They haven't been LSU traditional trenches. And we haven't had it since 2019. You can even argue in 2019 those weren't prototypical trenches. Even though that offensive line won the Joe Moore Award, Joe Burrow made them look really damn good. Joe Burrow was Houdini on so many plays. His movement in the pocket was like he was Minority Reporting everyone's moves before they happened. Like Joe Burrow gave that that offensive line that Joe Moore Award. And then that defensive line, their leading sacker was Neil Farrell with like 3.5 sacks. Like Caleb Von Chason led the team in sacks with like 6.5. Like they weren't like a high pressure, high octane defensive line. I mean, they more read and react. Tyler Shelvin had a hell of a season, and he was that defensive tackle. Braden Fehoko had a good season, but more of a finesse defensive tackle, a penetrative DT. And so ever since then, 2019 included, it's been way too finesse up front. Way too finesse. Sorry, excuse me for that. It was a hard to watch game, guys. Hard to watch game because it wasn't just, oh, LSU are missing this guy and that guy. Oh my gosh. It was that it just felt like everyone wanted this game to end quick. They wanted this game over and done with and out of the way. Get out of the way. We're done with you for this game, And I understand it. I get it. Because we want to go into the future with Lane Kiffin and into the future with where LSU's going. And I'm all there for that. I'm all aboard that. This is, someone accused me of hating Lane Kiffin. And the reason, I was like, why? Where's the comment I made that said I hate Lane Kiffin? Show me. Of course, they couldn't show any comment that said I hate Lane Kiffin. What they showed me was a comment where somebody said, Brian Kelly isn't capable of winning a championship, blah, 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 blah. And they were an Ole Miss fan. And I said, and Lane Kiffin is? And it was like, ooh, you hate him. You hate him. And it's like, no, I'm literally just saying that both didn't have a championship as a head coach. So why are you like acting like your guy is so much better than Brian Kelly, who doesn't have a title? Whereas, like, yeah, Kiffin is a better coach than Kelly. He works harder than Kelly. He doesn't have as many wins as Kelly. He's been an assistant in a lot of these stops where he has been at his most successful, but he's building something and getting into something here from Ole Miss now into LSU that is just, I think it's the start of something special, but a continuation of something special. But for people to try and turn that into that was kind of like, dude, stop. That guy's name is DTS LSU baseball or something. And it's like, I don't know why he hates me, but man, this guy is a stalker. This guy's a stalker level dude, because he is gone. And I get it. I would, get receipts on people or whatever. Like, okay, I get it. Like, you said something, the internet's forever. Like, you have to eat it, Cool. But the fact that this guy is literally digging up like, oh, you said DJ Chester was a good center after he started. Sorry, he came off the bench on the road as a freshman in his first ever appearance for LSU and played center for the last 2 quarters and was awesome and protected Jaden Daniels very well in a comeback win. And you said he was good, but you couldn't see, in hindsight already that Chester sucked and that we wouldn't have a second center for him to compete against that would get the best out of him. And it's like, I just want to point out that sometimes our narratives that we want, and we're trying to fit everything into that. And sometimes we forget some of our own terrible takes from the past and some of our own ridiculous things that we've said. And sometimes we try and twist the words of others to try and fit any kind of puzzle for a narrative that we possibly can. Like, oh, that's what he said too. Yeah, get him. You know what, guys? I think I'm gonna I've got to carry on with this. I'm gonna do part 2 tonight. Tonight we're gonna stay up all night working. We're gonna be working hard tonight. So tonight we're gonna do another stream, and we're gonna talk more about this game and get into more deep thoughts about all this stuff, where LSU's future is going and all that stuff. We didn't quite get into why the future is so bright in this show, but I want to in the next show, which will be starting around 11 p.m. tonight, Central Time. 11 p.m. Central Time, around 11 p.m. Central Time. So, everybody, thank you very much, and I can't wait to join with you again. We've barely just started scraping the surface of this whole thing, and there's so much more to discuss. Everybody, thanks for hanging out with us, and go Tigers. We'll be talking to you soon. This has been LSU Odyssey. I get it. We don't have the best layout. We don't have the best production. We do things in a kooky, strange, weird way. We don't look as uniform as other people or do things exactly like other people do or format things like other people do or have this type of look or whatever. Like, we don't want to. We don't care. And if it looks like shit to you, like, fine. I'd rather have it look like shit than look like a fucking robot. That's for sure. So, everybody, have a good night. Go Tigers. Always go Tigers. And definitely check out the article we did for kind of a more well-rounded picture from what we've been saying and detailing here. And then go read the article to kind of get a good second dose of that there on LSUODYSSEY.com. Right there on the site. Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us, for joining us, and cannot wait for tonight, where we're going to be doing a double dip episode, a special double dip episode. So please join us for that long into the night, long show tonight. Please join us. Thank you, everybody. Bring your comments.